So, Moyra, this is the fourth annual Creativity and Culture Conference, and in earlier years, we have begun the discourse around what is creativity, and artists have a very different approach to creativity compared to business people, compared to academics. So let me just start by just briefly asking you to summarize what your approach to creativity is as an artist.
Okay, excuse me, I am going to have to cough again, of
Yeah,
course,
that's
typically.
fine. Yeah, don't worry.
As an artist, my approach to creativity, in a way, creativity is like an exploration into the unknown for me. So it's a state of mind, and it happens when I get into kind of what I call creative flow, where I don't really know what's going to happen next, and it's like a sort of an improvisation. So once you're kind of in that space and you don't know what is going to happen next and you're making it up as you go along, to me that's when you're in your kind of creative, either creative flow or creative mind, or that is creativity.
And you know, there is also this discourse where some people say everyone's creative, and others say, well, no, that becomes meaningless. If we say everyone and everything is creative, then you know, what exactly are we talking about? And some people say you have to have talent to be creative. So let's look at the approach where we believe that everyone is creative because we are present and our existence makes a difference. So from that point of view, what is like, how do you interpret presence and being creative because we are present and simply because we exist?
I'm definitely in the camp that everyone is creative, or everyone has the capability to be creative, or they probably are and they're not even noticing it, because in a way for me it is a state of mind, and as you said, and I completely agree, it's a state of when you're present. Because when you're super present, that's it, you're at the edge of your experience. So that kind of idea of going into the unknown and making it up as you go along, you can only do that when you're present, because if you're kind of a little bit behind present, you've got some sort of plan in front of you that you're following, or some sort of map or some sort of set of rules, then that's not quite the same as being creative and making them up, which is kind of what that's my interpretation of creativity.
And then we look at emergence, you know, so when we are present, there is an emergence of opportunities, and as you would perhaps put it, spaces that we create these spaces. And so what makes the difference then between somebody being able to create those spaces consciously and others, they still create those spaces, but maybe they're not creating them in a very conscious way?
That's a difficult question. It's being able to do it consciously is perhaps what somebody who is, I would say, professionally creative, or somebody who is talented might be able to do more consciously, perhaps they choose to kind of go there. I think that anybody who's experienced, it's a bit like you, or any time that you're lost, you're probably being creative. So when people get stuck when they're painting, I thought, oh, this is good, because, you know, now that you're stuck, you know, you don't know what's going to happen next, and it's kind of like you've got to kind of be creative to kind of get out of that stuckness. So that might be a situation where your person who isn't sort of consciously being creative might be creative. It's like whether they're lost and they don't know what to do next, because you're going to have to do something, and that's when you're kind of making it up. Or it might be where you're just absorbed totally into kind of whatever it is you're doing. So it doesn't have to be creative painting or pottery or anything, or music. It could be fishing or running or something, cooking, you know, those kind of activities.
And art is like it, well, it's a metaphor for life in a sense, isn't it? Because you talk about being stuck when somebody's creating a painting, you know, they get stuck, and that's a metaphor for being stuck in life, as it were.
Yeah, and I mean, if you kind of approach be, you know, a painting in that way, that's quite an interesting sort of notion to take on. And even the notion that being stuck is a good thing and you're going to be creative to get out of it, it sort of reframes being stuck into something that's an exciting opportunity, as opposed to like, oh no, it's the end of the world, which might be kind of like just not being present about it, or kind of going back into old patterns and trying to do the same thing over and over again, perhaps.
And as an artist, you see people creating tangible products with their art, you know, whether it's paintings or drawings or, you know, artistic products. And in a way, we're creating our own futures as well, aren't we? So again, like thinking of life as a metaphor for that art. And when we are creating our futures, it's a little bit like painting, isn't it? Visualizing,
I
imagine.
love that idea. I mean, I've actually got a t-shirt which I got from a kids clothing shop which says "Create the Future" on it, and it's my favorite t-shirt, so I love to wear it when I'm painting. But yeah, to me, absolutely, that's the you know, you can see, yes, you know, everyone's creative because we are creating our futures by whatever we're doing in the present. You can be conscious of it or not conscious of it, but absolutely, it's the same thing for me, totally. I mean, I like visual art and I love painting because I love colour and I like looking. It's one of the things I enjoy. So that to me is like, it's just a really beautiful space to kind of be in, but it doesn't have to be like, so like somebody who's more tactile might like pottery or sewing, you know, that it doesn't matter which one it is. It's just what you prefer, really.
And I suppose much of art, not all art, you know, it probably begins with imagining, you know, visualizing, and in a way, life is like that as well. Like our futures, we imagine our futures, and then we take steps to create what we imagine. And some people don't have a very clear imagination of, or maybe they're worrying and they're anxious, and so their imagination is creating actions which leads to emergence of spaces that they wouldn't wish to be in.
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it, because there's, you know, there's different ways of making art. So if, you know, I'm going to go with visual art because that's what I know. So you could draw what's in front of you, you know, it's a way of, or paint what you see in front of you. That is you know, that is a way of making art. Or you could imagine a scene and then paint it. That's another way of making art. And like, to me personally, I like what you used the word earlier, it's like emergent art. So like I paint and then the paintings kind of emerge. So if you could like translate all of those things into like creating your future, there's sort of like different ways you could create your future. You could see something like, oh, they've got a nice house, I'd like a house like that, and then you could work towards that. Or you could design a house in your head and build it, like, you know, like that. Or you could just follow what kind of seems like a good idea, or like that feels good, and you'll end up with something that kind of fits you, or it'll kind of emerge without you necessarily visualizing it beforehand. So you could do all of those different things and you're kind of applying it to life, I suppose.
Yeah. And so with this emergence, then we think of the impact of it. And so and very often we think of creativity as being an individual endeavor, and very often it's not individual. It happens in networks. Creativity happens as a result of a group of people coming together, or as you just said, we pick and choose a variety of things and put them together. So it's the synthesis of either products or people. Have you?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I actually really like painting in a group sort of scenario. And so I run, you know, art workshops, and what I really like about that is that there's something that happens, not just individually, like you're painting your painting, but one of my favorite paintings actually emerged because right across the other side of the room, somebody had painted really different to me, but they're very bold painting with this kind of angel shape on it. It was like black and purple and gold, and it was like really striking. So it was quite a sort of striking image, and I was like, it kind of kept, it was in my mind. So because I just go with the flow, and I just sort of drew this kind of shape, the same shape that they painted over the other side of the room onto my painting. At the end of the day, the paintings look very, very different, but there's that sort of, that element that's sort of like, you can sort of look around the room and go, oh, then I like the way they've done those pink dots or whatever, and you can put them in your painting. So it becomes this sort of collaborative thing, even though each individual painting is a unique thing. I really like that. And if you think about sort of, the history of art, often it is schools of painting where a bunch of people are kind of inspiring each other in a certain direction.
That's right. And when we talk about emergence, it's very, very often not what we've planned at all. You didn't plan to be inspired by that other person's painting, but it emerged. And then, like, the feedback loop between our presence and emergence and impact, and then the impact of our actions, the impact of our presence, or the impact of our existence, then there's that feedback loop, and it changes our presence, it changes our existence.
Yeah. So I don't know if you, I'm sure you do, but one of the other things I quite like, and sometimes I've used it as a metaphor for, mostly my art is like properly kind of like purely emergent. So I did a series for a while that was kind of exploring like a bit meta, but like exploring the idea of emergence, but using the hero's journey. So that notion of like, in order to kind of create Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. So you have to leave the village, like leave the known and go into the woods, the unknown, in order, and there you will find things that will kind of change you and transform you, and you kind of return to the village transformed. That's the sort of basic thing that I know about in terms of it. But I love this idea of going into the woods as a metaphor for going into the unknown to discover. And so I sort of did a series of paintings which sort of used it. They were sort of emergent, but they also had this narrative underneath, because I do a lot of writing underneath my paintings. So sort of writing about that as a notion, and so bringing it together in the paintings with, they were pictures of woods, and yeah, so, and I wrote about that sort of underneath it, and it kind of had a sort of more of a theme going through it. That sort of some more, interplay between planning and unplanned, so sort of playing around with that. The other thing that I found really inspiring is what's he called? He wrote The Unbearable Lightness of Being, Milan Kundera. And I read his book when I was like in my 20s, and literally couldn't stop reading it, stayed up all night reading it. But the real kind of key idea that really stuck with me is this notion of poetic thought. So things happen. So like you're talking about that sort of interplay of like, there's emergence and then there's response, and we pick and choose. And I like this idea that as humans, we do pick and choose our experience of reality, and we do it poetically, because we can't help ourselves. We'll pick something that somehow rhymes with something else or resonates. There's a bit in the story where this woman, she falls in love, but she falls in love because it's 6 o'clock and there's a certain piece of music playing, which reminded her of the fact, and that it was, number 6 was a house that she lived in when she was a child, and this was her favorite piece of music, and she kind of like conflated all of those things and then decided to fall in love with this person. And I think it's a beautiful, like, metaphor in itself of how we are poets, or we are creative, because we will follow things that, that's like, that's an appealing thing for us, and we'll put them together and follow those poetic ideas, which I really like.
Yeah, excellent. So that's, again, poetry is an example of, it's a beautiful example of emergence, isn't it? Because those words, they very, very often, they're unplanned. They it's actually the thoughts that emerge as a result sometimes of just hearing the words. And
Yeah.
and if it makes a deep impact on us, then we do become changed. And as you say, in the hero's journey, we return not as the same as we were before. We no longer fit into the mold. If something has really touched us very deeply, we no longer can go back to the mold that we were in before.
Yeah.
So from your artwork, can you give me some examples of where you've noticed that there's been a deep impact on people and their presence has been transformed?
From artwork that I've done for them, or that they've done it, because I work with people
Yes.
either. Well, into that painting that I was talking about earlier with the picture of the angel in it, that painting, I had an interesting experience around that, which was somebody was pretending to try to buy it. It was actually some sort of scam person. I've discovered artists are all kind of common trope. Like, I want to buy your painting, I want to send it to my wife, will you send me the money? It became this whole thing, and I was like, this doesn't seem right, and he doesn't seem to care. He just wants to spend some money on a painting, doesn't want to buy this particular painting, which is one what I really, really loved. And in the end, eventually I discovered that it was kind of just some kind of weird scam, and it's like, no, I'm not sending you the painting and then you'll send me a check. That's not going to happen. And I was quite relieved that I didn't have to sell my painting to this person, because it meant a lot to me and I didn't want that person to have it. And very shortly after that, I think I put it on Pinterest and I shared it on social media, and somebody just came up and said, I love this painting, I want to buy it. And for her, it's the fact that it had an angel on it. She had a business that had the name Angel in it, and so that really resonated for her. And so it was this, like, then that painting was like, actually to sell it to her was a completely different experience. And she's like, when I look at that, it just it just makes me feel, and she couldn't even put it into words, which I really loved. She's like, it just like this. And I was like, yes, you're the right person to buy my painting. This is my favorite painting. I don't want it to go to somewhere where it's just a thing. It's like, this actually conveys part of that sort of magic, which is the sort of state of mind that I go into when I'm painting. So there was that, and now that's in her house, and sharing its sort of magic in a way that she appreciates. So there's that aspect to it. And in terms of painting, when I'm working in a sort of workshop sort of scenario, really my job is like just to kind of get people started, and like, it's okay, just keep going, it's fine. And that in itself is really lovely, because afterwards people haven't painted for years. They went to art school and they just stopped because they got a job, life, all of that. And then but afterwards they're like, and they're painting every week, and they're exhibiting and making paintings, and that's a sort of transformation in a way, just coming back to it, or kind of sparking it off again. Or people can be really, being faced with the blank canvas can be actually terrifying. And people cry because they know they want to paint, but they've got a blank canvas and they can't start. So but the act of starting, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can just start and kind of build up the layers, and once they're started, they're fine. Just keep going.
You act like you are a catalyst, aren't you? So your presence, being in the form of a catalyst, enables the emergence of creativity in others. They say, there's that saying, isn't it, that the teacher's role is to light the fire, to kindle the fire, basically.
Absolutely, yes, that's definitely how I see it. Because it's just, sometimes people get stuck, and it's like, that's fine, that's good, keep going. Or it's gone all really ugly. It's like, brilliant, you're right in the mess of it, the woods of it. It'll kind of just keep going. It will happen. And generally speaking, it does. But one time somebody came, but they were really wanting me to teach them how to do something, and it's like, I don't really do that. And I don't know what, it didn't work for her, but that's one person. the rest of them.
As we have this conversation, you know, we're obviously both on the same page. We agree that everyone can be creative. We agree that we act as catalysts for emergence of creativity in others. And then, like, to be the devil's advocate, then why is it that not everyone is present in a way that is creative? You know, why is it that so many people are victim to depression and to high states of anxiety? And so why, if it's so simple for us to be present and to be creative, then why is it that not everyone is really?
Honestly, I really don't know, because I think it's because maybe they just haven't tried. I mean, I really believe that that, you know, being creative, or that sort of, if you've got it in you, that sort of, well, everyone's got it in them. Some people it comes out in different ways. So it might be that some people have got a different form of self-expression that to them would like unlock that and sort of release the valve and like make them, you know, they'd find joy in it. And some people, you know, that actually my son really likes making lists. He has a very, you know, he likes to organize things, and he's done it since he was a little tiny child, just like organize things in you know, categories. And I guess that's his form of it. So there may be different ways of doing it, but I think, you know, everybody does need to find that thing for them, because in my opinion, it's a human need. It's not a luxury. And I think people can dismiss it and feel that it's, oh, that's just frivolous and that's not going to help and that's not the answer. And it's like, no, but it really is. You need to try it and kind of do it, and see, you know, and keep going and keep trying things until you find the thing that you can sort of lose yourself in, because it's such a release. And it, for, you know, me personally, I like when I do another thing called wild art journaling, which is, it's got more writing in it and it's collage. It's very accessible. You can do it on paper, so you don't have to be good at drawing, which is just a skill that you can learn, but that will put people off. So it's very accessible, but and I can't call it a therapy because, you know, it's not therapy. Well, it's not art therapy, but it's incredibly therapeutic, and that is why I do it, because whatever's going on, at the end of it, I feel better. And you know, I can't really, you know, I try it, see if you feel better. That's fundamentally all I, you know. And I think that a lot of people are depressed because they're not doing it, and I think that's the reason. So I don't know why they don't, but they perhaps don't think it's possible for them, or they think that, a lot of people think, oh, I'm no good at art. And that's one of the things I really get angry about. Not angry, but, you know, it doesn't matter if you're any good or not, it's whether you enjoy doing it or not. That's the thing for me.
Yeah, and that's the other issue about creativity, is that, does creativity need to be valuable, and who determines what this value is? So people who say I'm no good at art, they have their value of what they do, their value of the way they draw, the way they write, you know, it's very low. And does that value need to be personal, or is it an external person? Because not everyone wants to sell their drawings, not everyone wants to sell what they write, but so yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be evaluated by gatekeepers who are going to judge whether it's going to be sold for £1,000, you know, or even £1. And so it's this intrinsic versus extrinsic value.
Yeah, and that's a really, really interesting kind of like interplay as well, because I think, as you rightly sort of mentioned, is what stops people is their own critic and their own judging self. So they will not do it because they will judge what they've done as bad. So as well as being a catalyst just to start people, another thing that I'm doing is helping them take away that judging self, so that they forget about that and it doesn't matter. So with art journaling, one of the best things is because you cover things up. You just let them go, cover them up. doesn't matter, just keep going, we're just playing. And it really, really doesn't matter. You don't have to show anyone this. This is something you are just doing for yourself. You close the book, you don't have to show anyone. And the writing, it gets covered up with collage and things, so you don't never, you know what I mean, it's just for you, it's just the experience. So with painting, it's a little bit more exposed because people can see the canvases that you're working on, so it's harder to get over that sort of standing back and looking at it, and perhaps, you know, as a, you know, it's like perhaps this is the difference for somebody who's just doing it because it feels good, and then somebody who's moving into that sort of interplay between it being personal and it being viewed, and being able to stand back and then go, I think that bit it's imbalanced, I want to kind of balance it by putting something there, but taking away that there's discernment, perhaps, like sort of being able to discern rather than judge, well, that's just bad, that's just bad. It's like you need to get away from that first before you can do anything. So generally speaking, like what I will do is like, let's make a really ugly painting. Let's just really make us, you know, let's just colours we hate. Let's just make it really scribbly, just like as ugly as we possibly can. So that kind of like can be liberating, and it's like, oh, great, you know, wow. And that it's just really, really fun. And then it's like, actually, you know, if you're making a painting, it is something that, you know, you're looking at, but that can be fun. But there's that. So as a painter, I started painting because I love doing it, and I didn't want to show anybody my paintings. I just wanted to paint them. I really liked painting them. And then it got to the point where I had so many paintings like lying around the place. It's like, okay, so maybe I should sell these paintings, be an artist and sell them. And that did bring that sort of that critic then sort of comes charging up again, and it's another little kind of time to sort of like overcome that. So it's like I did a group exhibition, so this is the first exhibition I did, and I really liked my paintings, and I was putting them up on the wall, and it was a joint exhibition, and we thought, well, they all look great together, this is marvelous, and they look fantastic. And then at just the moment the private view starts, suddenly I just was like, oh my God, everyone else's paintings are amazing and mine are shit. And it was like, oh God. And it was like, I'd sort of forgotten about that critic because I'd spent so much time. I'm like, and I'm teaching people, it doesn't matter what people think, it's whether you enjoy it or not. And then suddenly I was in this like, oh, okay, there it is. And I really had to breathe deeply through that. It's like, I enjoyed painting these paintings. I enjoyed painting these paintings. And, but, you know, so showing them is a very different thing. But it was brilliant doing it because, like, over that week, you know, some people, I heard them, they hated my paintings, but some people loved them. And it was kind of, at the end of it, it was like, that's the way it is. You know, some people will not like them, but some people will. And, you know, it was interesting, definitely interesting. And I think so that sort of critic, that sort of judgment of it is something that stops people.
Yeah.
And it will.
There's a time and place for everything. So creativity begins with being generative. So we create what we are feeling inspired to create. And then if we do want to make that creativity public, then of course it has to undergo that scrutiny of the evaluators, the critics, the ones who are going to decide whether they want to part with any of their money to buy it. You know, then there is that period of evaluation, but not everyone will want their creativity to be evaluated externally by the public, and therefore they'll choose not to sell it. They just pleasure, and they will do it because, as you said yourself, it makes them feel good to engage, and that in itself is useful, it's valuable.
Oh, I think, you know, in itself, that's, you know, absolutely, I'm totally kind of, that's the most important part of it. You know, like going out and being an artist in the world, that's a whole different game in a way of, like, so overcoming that sort of like that sense of, and it really, it's still internal, it's still overcoming that kind of like critic idea of like suddenly judging it from the person who comes in and hates it. You're standing in their shoes and looking at it. So it's like before that, it's like just doing it for fun, and and fun is enough. Like, oh, it's just for fun. That's a really good thing. I don't understand why people like dismiss that as like unimportant or frivolous. It's like, enjoy your life. Come on, it's really important to do things that you enjoy. It really changes everything. And I think it's just doing it for yourself really just lifts your own spirits, and it makes me feel like I shine. So if I do it, I just feel shiny, and I think that can have a massive impact in the world as well. So I actually, the first time I started painting in the way that I sort of learned how to paint, I hadn't done any painting myself for a long time, and I went and I painted for 3 days on like an art retreat, and I felt so nourished by it that I came back. It was just like sticking my fingers like roots in the ground and just sort of like filling myself up and coming back really shiny. And I got a job like straight afterwards, because I was just like in such a sort of ebullient mood, I can't say that word, but like feeling so good that it was like somebody was saying, oh, we're going to hire somebody. I was like, yeah, what is it? I'll do it. You can train me. And I was just like that. And I actually got the job and was retrained, and ended up, so I still do it actually, so working, doing coaching, which I hadn't done before. So I think it can actually transform your life just by doing something you really enjoy for a bit. Why wouldn't you? But like people do, I haven't got time for that. I'm too busy. It's not going to help me with my career. It's like, no, it will help you with your career. It really will.
Yeah. Excellent. So Moyra, any final thoughts then about presence, emergence and impact? I think that example that you've given has very nicely summed it up, but do you have any other, would you like to conclude with anything else?
I think just like if you've got a little tiny inkling that you might want to try something, just go try it, because it could change your life in a good way.
Yeah, it's because they say that creativity, it's wanting to come out from you, and so allow it to emerge and see the impact it makes.
Yeah, see how you feel.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, Moyra, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you as well. How lovely. It's really nice to kind of like, you totally kind of get it. Sometimes I'm trying to sort of, no, you completely understand. It's wonderful.
I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Bye for now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.